Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Movie Mates podcast. I am Matthew, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Callum.
Great to see you, dude. Great to see you. So today, it's our 30th episode of the podcast, and I'm just going to pass over to Callum to explain what movies we're going to be talking about, or rather what mockumentaries we're going to be talking about, because that is our theme and subject matter today. So yeah, off to you, dude. Off to you. What movies we're going to be talking about?
Well, as you know from having seen the films that we're talking about today, this is a very different genre to what we're used to. It's completely, different context of filming, which I kind of struggled in the review side of, because it's kind of difficult to critique a film that's taking the piss out of itself.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I tried to write my notes as serious as I could, but I think I struggled critically, and some of my points are going to be a little weak. But just to introduce all the films that we're going to be talking about today, as usual, spoilers for all the films we're discussing. And as usual, we're talking about 3 films today, starting with This Is Spinal Tap, then moving on to What We Do in the Shadows, and then finishing off with Popstar, Never Stop, Never Stopping, one of my favorite titles of all time.
Me too, actually. Me too. But yeah, as Callum said, those are the 3 films we're going to talk about today. Full spoiler disclosure as well. Thank you to everyone who's supported us recently, all the likes, subscriptions. Please be sure to like and share this video and comment your thoughts on these mockumentaries down below. But yeah, I'm just going to pass it over to you if you have any contextual points about the genre or just want to hop right into our opening film.
I mean, I think we may as well just leap into This Is Spinal Tap.
Absolutely.
Recently, we talked about the film Misery, and this is the director of said film, and also When Harry Met Sally, Rob Reiner, with one of the most insane filmographies I've ever seen.
Oh yeah,
He
like
is
it's
the absolute
pretty,
G. I think
pretty.
I think he may be my favorite director, having perhaps surpassed Jon Favreau.
And Richard Curtis.
Richard Curtis was like, Richard Curtis made my favorite film about time, but sometimes, like in music, when you have a favorite song, the artist isn't always your favorite
Yeah,
band.
no, true. Yeah,
Uh,
true.
I think that Rob Reiner has the most consistent filmography from what I've seen.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, it is pretty excellent. It actually surprised me in this film. He actually stars as the documentary maker, which I thought was a really
Yes.
curious choice. And like you said at the beginning, like I completely resonate and relate with you because I think it is really hard to critique these films and analyze them and review them because they are so self-aware and they do take the piss out of themselves. So it is going to be difficult to talk about this because like most of my notes are very weak and most of them are like either funny quotes or thought things I found funny in the film really. But I'm really excited to talk about this one because and maybe you can shed some light on this because it really seems like this film defined this genre.
Yeah, I was doing a bit of research into mockumentaries and just sort of the origins, and it does appear that this was one of the absolute pioneers of the genre, especially sort of the rockumentary theme, pushing sort of the behind the scenes of the music industry, which I think, obviously we're talking about 2 of those kinds of films today, and I think it's probably the most interesting take on the genre. There are others that I want to explore in a future episode, such as Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon, which is about an up and coming serial killer. And I would really like to talk about that in the future. But yes, I agree with you. This was huge for the genre, and I think that Rob Reiner is in a way sort of like Stan Lee, but if he could act.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a good point. Like, he's such a talented guy, and kudos to Rob Reiner even as well for sort of creating his own genre somewhat, and for starring in the film as well. Like he's a man of many talents, and I would say he's probably one of the more underrated filmmakers of the generation, really, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he often doesn't write his own films, but the direction, especially in this, is really outstanding because it's meant to feel like a real documentary. It's meant to feel like real life, and I think that his take on sort of like the grunge era of British rock music is exceptionally genuine. Like it feels like real life. I never questioned that this wasn't a real band, and in fact, until maybe 2 years ago, whenever I heard the name Spinal Tap, I did think that was a real band.
Yeah. Yeah, no, completely, bro. Completely. Like you've nailed it there because I think this film sort of depicts a more, refined classic documentary style rather than well compared to the other two films we're going to be talking about, because I think this film it takes a more serious approach, and there is comedy in there, but like I think if you watch this and if someone told you beforehand this is a real documentary, you probably would believe it. I think if you didn't know if it was fake, because it is so realistic.
Yeah, because as we said, this whole genre is like, making fun of other people that came before it, but in real life. So
Mm-hmm.
this is obviously making fun of musical artists, but I think that it's only really a piss take in terms of character personality. Obviously, that they're total stereotypes of what rock stars would be. But I think that they actually try really hard to make the music good, and I think that there are quite a few examples of actually, talented
Oh yeah,
musical work within the film.
completely. I think there's some absolute banging tunes in here to be quite honest with you, and I think we'll definitely go into it with Popstar, Never Stop Never Stopping, because I genuinely think there is talent there as well. But
100%.
regardless, yeah, I don't know, like I this film, it's sort of like as you said, mate, it does embrace like the classic 1980s British rock star, and it's sort of it is sort of a thing, and like especially in our generation, a lot of people grow up wanting to be rock stars, and like that, it never really crossed me as a kid. Like it's never something I wanted to do. I just wanted to question you. Like, was this ever like, did you ever want to become like a rock star? Because it is quite a stereotypical like aspiration for most young people. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I knew early on that I had no talent, so that was never really an aspiration for me.
Same.
But Matthew, I think you're hiding a little fact that you aspire to be a rapper.
Matty J Raps. Shout out. If we ever hit 1 million subscribers, I will release that mixtape. But yeah, no. Apart from, well, I
Have I
suppose so.
actually, I don't think that I've heard it. I thought that the tapes were lost.
I think there is definitely a recording on my old iPad somewhere, but I've lost the charger for that, so we definitely will find. If I find the charger or get a new charger, I will definitely show you that for sure, man, for sure. So one thing I noticed about the film, what noticed in the film during the research, was it strangely has the origin for the saying like "dial to 11," which I thought was absolutely fascinating. I did not know that. I thought that was a mind blowing.
I was aware that that's where it originated from, but I thought it was quite understated in the film. Like I didn't think it didn't feel like they were trying to create an iconic moment.
Yeah.
It just felt like a natural part of the script that happened to be latched onto by the fandom.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a completely, spot on way of putting it. Like the whole film is sort of, it doesn't aim to create iconic moments. It just aims to like, give the audience an insight into like, you know, the secrecy and stuff and the behind the scenes of like rock stars in the form of a mockumentary. So, and there is so many iconic moments in here, and that saying's included. So, kudos to Rob Reiner, because he's absolutely nailed it in this one, I think.
Yeah, I do have to say, there are one too many shots of just crotches just at the start of the film. Just they zoom in and I believe they call them their anacondas. Is it? Uh, and then we see that Harry Shearer has like stuffed a courgette down his pants or something.
Yeah. During the, I think he's going through like a military base security point or an airport security point, and he just pulls out a cucumber or courgette or something.
It was a very interesting choice on part of the
Was
from the
interesting.
director.
Yeah, man. I'm just happy to go by your notes, mate, and I'll try and fill them when I can if that works for you.
Yeah, it's just sort of when we say sort of about musical mockumentaries, when we talk about say Popstar, it's very obvious about who they're parodying.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously meant to be like a piss take of Justin Bieber
Sure.
and people of that like. But I feel like this film just doesn't hold back on making fun of the entire British,
Yeah.
well, British and American music industry, because we sort of see flashbacks throughout the film to previous points in their careers when they, had music in the style of like the Beatles, the Mamas and the Papas, and then throughout the film, it's like, they are kind of like unapologetically British in the way that like the Kinks are. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel I respected that they just didn't hold back from, potentially offending everyone.
Completely, mate. And it actually, credit to the film, like it does take the piss out of like contemporary bands at the time, and even bands before it, like you said, the Beatles. You know, one of the biggest sort of plot points in this film, I suppose, is like they copying the White Album of the Beatles, but instead the Black Album. So
Yeah.
I think that was quite funny. And also, like you said, I suppose the band in, I think it's like 1982 it's set or something, or 81, something around that. And it sort of seems like they are characterized, as you said, like the Kinks or like the Clash or something like that. And it's just really interesting to me because they are so like inherently British as well.
Yeah, and I don't know. I saw a bit of Steven Tyler
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the hair for Nigel.
Yeah, I mean, 80s hair is it's definitely iconic is one word for it. Not sure if it holds up today, but anyway.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not sold on. I don't think that the movie did a good enough job of telling us the characters' names because I have no idea.
Oh, mate,
I remember one's
completely.
called Nigel, David, and Ian, but then
Yeah.
the rest I cannot tell you.
Mate, most of my notes are just like lead guitarist or like drummer or something.
Yeah, mine's just Harry Shearer did this, Harry Shearer did
Yeah.
that.
I thought one thing that was really interesting about sort of the band and stuff is like, do you think it sort of takes the piss out of the recycled nature of band members? You know, we see in this that I think they mentioned they have like 37 members of the band, and like they keep like having drummers die. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think one.
under mysterious
Yeah,
circumstances.
there's like he died under a bizarre gardening accident. The authorities, and one line I thought was quite good was like the authorities said it was better left unsolved, which I thought was quite
Yeah.
funny. But no, do you think that is sort of like a subtle poke at that? Like, you know, sort of bands just like recycle members?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think that the most consistent bands are probably the ones that call it a day when you know when it starts to fall apart.
Mhm.
But you know, it does seem like a very popular trend to just replace the band members that leave. But I think by that point you're no longer the same band. So yeah, I think that is what they're going after. But I also like to think that they're actually just murdering their drummers because one of them was that they blew up on stage.
So yeah. Like that is crazy. I actually I think that's a really moment of levity in the film as well because like I don't know because maybe there is that like a subtle sort of conspiracy theory throughout the film that the band is like killing off their drummer or something. I don't know. I think that'd be fun.
It does seem super suspicious.
It does seem super suspicious. Actually, one question I sort of have to you, and this is sort of a big question, sort of not really related to the film, but you know, I've been watching a lot of interviews lately, like comparing different bands and artists, and I just want to hear your take on like the, the best band of all time.
Oh, see, I was talking about this to my mum yesterday, and I'd whittled it down to my top favorite five performers, but
Oh, that's a
I
good
don't
one.
think I could rank them.
That's okay. No,
Do,
that's okay. That's hard to rank. It is hard to rank.
do you want me to throw out the five?
Go for it. I'm really excited to hear this. Actually, go for it, mate.
Okay, so Pink Floyd, the Beatles, the Kinks. Uh, I've forgotten the fourth one, Talking Heads, and Bob Dylan. But if I had to switch Bob Dylan out for a band, I'd say the Rolling Stones.
That's a great list, mate. Honestly, and I was reading an article yesterday on the Rolling Stone magazine, and they had like ranked the top 100 greatest bands and artists of all time, and their top two was Bob Dylan and the Beatles as well. So you know, it is without doubt like a really there are really talented artists obviously and stuff, and they actually ranked Talking Heads 100th as well, which I thought that was a bit low. I thought they'd be more popular than that.
How long was the list? Was it the top
100.
100?
Yeah, yeah,
So they just cracked it.
yeah. Just cracked it. But I suppose, yeah, music is
Um,
subjective, so
yeah, but like yeah, I think they're an obscure enough band that I would understand that if it wasn't the Rolling Stone magazine, which is meant to be like one of the biggest musical
yeah,
publications.
yeah.
I would have thought that they would like their music more. But I'd love to hear from you. Like, who are some of your favorites?
Some of my favorites, the Beatles, the Clash are probably my favorite at the minute. Love their stuff. Who else am I really liking at the
The
minute?
Beach Boys.
I love the Beach Boys. Good show. AC/DC, but then I don't know if AC/DC is too like woke, is too cool. I don't know because a lot of it seems like a bit of a modern trend to like it's cool to like AC/DC, but AC/DC and hmm, he's not one of my he's obviously not the most talented artist ever, but KSI recently released an album and it is actually generally very good, and it's rap, and I don't usually listen to that, but it actually is very good. And
I think you're afraid to say to me that you like a modern band. like, yeah, I'm saying KSI, but like, please don't give me shit for it.
No, obviously, like KSI is not on the level of the Beatles, but no, probably the Clash is probably my favorite at the minute.
Yeah, and you like a bit of Warbly Jets, am I right?
Warbly Jets, yeah, yeah. See, I don't know whether it is like whether it's just an English band thing, but I genuinely think English bands generally are more successful than American bands, because I think American bands tend to split up more. I don't know what it is about it, but
Yeah, I also think that like, sort of like with Beatlemania and stuff, I think that Americans love British culture, so they kind of like welcome them in as like, ooh, a fun and exciting
yeah,
new
yeah,
thing. Like,
for sure.
whenever something needs to be done and like to be refreshed, they expect like a British band to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's why British bands often have huge success overseas.
Mm-hmm. Completely, man. Completely. I'd love to like talk. I think we could spend hours just talking about music because there's so much talking points in there, and
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I think the mockumentary genre works especially well with music. You know, my two favorite films that we're talking about today are probably This Is Spinal Tap and Popstar. So like it just really works for me. Like it just clicks. So
Yeah. I mean, we also have friends that are musicians themselves and huge fans of music. So,
oh yeah,
there's potential for future guests
absolutely,
talking
mate.
about
Absolutely, completely.
desert island music or like their favorite albums or something.
I'll be so good, man. I'd love to do that because like we've said, you know, music is it is subjective and everyone has different tastes. So it's something that you can definitely have a great discussion about. And obviously, like
Yeah.
no one's influenced my music more than you. Like you've got, I would say of everyone I've ever met, you have the best taste in music. I'm not just saying that. Like you're known for your great taste in music, so I'll have to commend you in that. It's great. It's phenomenal.
I would say that I'm not good at many things, and having a good music taste is not something that I do. It's not a talent. But
It
I,
is.
I could give you some good
You
recommendations.
could. You could.
Uh, but yeah, we have some friends who have a great taste in music, and
Oh yeah.
they've certainly influenced me.
Oh yeah.
Uh, I don't know if it's just me, but were you completely surprised by how many individual performances there are in this film? Like, it feels
Mhm.
like more of a musical film than it does just a film.
It does completely, man, and it's sort of the film makes the choice of, you know, it doesn't necessarily show snippets of performances like Popstar does, for example. Like this film just goes straight into like, you know, maybe a minute or two of a full scene of music, and like you said, man, I thought that was a very interesting choice because it did sort of feel like a musical element of the film.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't to me a negative thing, but it was
Mhm.
just something that I completely didn't expect. I expected more character and dialogue, but what we got, I really enjoyed.
Yeah, man, completely. And like, I don't know whether the film. I actually think they're really talented guys. I don't know. I don't know if it's them singing or not, but I actually think there's some generally good tunes in there.
Yeah, weirdly, I assumed that they had brought in, professional musicians to, write the music, perform the music, and then just have them lip sync. But I watched the credits of the film because, unfortunately, I was kind of forced to because there were still scenes going as the credits were rolling, and
Hmm.
it said that the music was by, the three main band members and Rob Reiner. So
Wow.
it seems that they wrote it and performed it. So
I mean,
that's incredibly
yeah, that is
impressive.
incredible, incredibly impressive, man. And like, I don't know. This film has. I don't know whether like Rob Reiner knows like a lot of famous actors in the industry, but like I could have swore I saw Billy Crystal in this or heard him at least. Is he in this?
Billy Crystal is in the film, but I didn't see him at any point.
See, I thought he was like one of one of the waiters dressed up in like a French mime. I don't know if that was him or not because it
Oh no,
sounded.
no, you're right, but I didn't see him. I looked it up, and yeah, he is in the film.
Wow. So, you know, I know you love Billy Crystal as well, and it's just really it was nice to see him in this because it was I
You're
suppose it
just
was like
attuned to spot him when he's hidden. You just smell Billy Crystal in the air.
because this was when Harry Met Sally in 1984 or 1986 or 1985 was around that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was around that era, and this was like obviously the events of the film are in 1982, but the film itself was released in 1984.
Hmm.
So yeah, he hadn't broken big with When Harry Met Sally just yet.
Yeah, well, it was good. It was good to actually like notice him in this because there's so many details you pick up on this film. It seems like a sort of mockumentary where you rewatch it and notice different things in each rewatch, doesn't it?
Hmm. So we talked about the talent of the performers. Were there any performances themselves that stood out to you?
I really liked what was his name? It was the actor who played Ian for me. I thought was the standout. I can't remember his name. I thought he was
Ian, the
fantastic.
manager.
Yeah, I thought he gives the I thought he gave the performance of the film.
Wonderful.
Who do
Uh,
what about you?
yeah,
What about you?
I felt that he was hard done by him and Nigel. So I'd say they were my two favorite characters of the film because I feel like both of them deserve better than Spinal Tap, and I was sort of
Yeah.
sad to see them return, and kind of with like a sort of lukewarm welcome from David. Like I think that both Ian and Nigel could uh, improve their situation.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. And it sort of did seem like Spinal Tap was slowly crumbling throughout the film as well. And I suppose Ian is right. Like towards the end of the film, he quits himself, under his own accord. And I suppose managers in the music industry, especially at the time, probably did get a lot of shit from the media and stuff. So and not a lot of reward in that case. It's the rock stars and the artists who get the fame and the glory, not necessarily the manager who helped pave the way for that. So I suppose like that the role is understated in a way. So credit to the guy who played Ian. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, because obviously he never really makes a mistake. You know, everything that the band is blamed for is the band's fault. You know, their controversy with say the album cover.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that it was their stubbornness. You know, by pushing against the corporation that wanted to change it, which
Completely.
actually led to him, you know, quitting.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of felt like a parallel between David's girlfriend and Yoko Ono. I feel like that's probably the kind of parody that they were pushing, that she was sort of starting to slowly tear the band apart.
Was she like the girlfriend or wife of one of the members of the Beatles that like helped to break them up? So I actually don't know much about her. I know she's famous in reference to the Beatles, but can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, Yoko Ono was John Lennon's wife, and she sort of started to, like slowly pull him away, and they like produced music together, and you know just gradually the Beatles kind of fell apart, and she's sort of the scapegoat for why the Beatles ceased to exist. It's probably unnecessary the amount of hate that she gets, uh, but
Is she
you
still
know
alive?
she is still alive, I believe. I think that she produced music quite recently. Uh, yeah, but
Mate, I was actually
I haven't fact checked that. I couldn't be 100%.
Well, no, mate, thanks for letting me know because that's really interesting. And I was watching a Paul McCartney interview and I think it's the Late Show or the Late Late Show with John Letterman. I don't know what is. I think that's his name. And it was just a really fascinating interview because he was
David Letterman.
David Letterman, maybe yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
And I'll link it in the description for anyone who wants to go check it out. It really is marvelous because he was talking about like they were like looking at photos of him and John Lennon, and I sort of do feel bad for George Harrison in that case because all the interviewers seem to ask is about McCartney's relationship with John Lennon, and they sort of disregard the passing of George Harrison a little bit. So, but apart from that, like
Yeah.
it's really interesting because McCartney goes on to describe how like he dreams about John Lennon often, and it is really sad because like they were I think they made up before his death, did they?
You know, I sort of haven't done a lot of looking into the sort of later years of their careers. You know, I've more like my breadth of
Mm-hmm.
knowledge kind of stops when they stopped.
It is interesting though to see what happened because um I don't know, it's just the whole Beatles lore is just so interesting, man, isn't it? Because they were like the first band to like take the world by storm, really.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose sort of the lack of acknowledgement that George Harrison gets is that just because uh, Paul McCartney and John Lennon were responsible for writing most of their biggest hits,
Yeah,
but you know, for me, George Harrison's my favorite Beatle just because he was the writer of "While My Guitar Gently Weeps,"
your
which is
favorite, yeah.
my favorite Beatles song and perhaps my favorite song of all time. What's your favorite Beatles songs? Where do you stand?
So my favorite Beatles songs are Octopus's Garden. I quite like, and I quite like When I Get Home. I think When I Get Home is written by, I think it's written by McCartney, and I can't remember who Octopus's Garden is written by. Part of me wants to say Ringo, but I don't think it is Ringo. I'll look it up. But no, like we could have our friend Ben on even for a Beatles episode one day, because I know he's a huge fan, isn't he?
Oh yeah, huge. I'd love to speak to him about that because I'm sure he has quite an in-depth knowledge of their history. Uh, you know, and I'd
Absolutely,
love
man.
to even maybe hear sort of like an informative report about their history from him. He'd be a great co-host.
Absolutely.
He's
Ben is
a man full of energy.
I mean, he's just such a great guy, isn't he? Our Ben, our Ben, as if like he's our
Indeed.
child or something. He's generally a nice guy. But yeah, Octopus's Garden was actually written and sung by Ringo Starr, so credit to him. But yeah, like it is really interesting because the sort of this film sort of, as you said at sort of the beginning, like it does pay sort of like an ode to the Beatles and stuff, and with the White Album and their Black Album, so it is interesting. Like, you know, I'm interested to hear what you think. Like, do you think we'll ever see like a band take over the world like the Beatles did? Because it seemed, I don't think he will, because the Beatles were just, they were everywhere, I'd imagine, at the time. You know,
Yeah, the Beatles were everywhere and they were for everyone. They appeal to, the
that's a great
four
way of putting it. Yeah.
quadrants. So, like everyone loved them, and I don't think that a modern band can replicate that success because there will always be a generation that hates modernity. I just don't think that you can replicate the success. How do you feel?
Yeah, mate, complete. I think you've nailed it there, because what you said about they were everywhere and for everyone, like that's just a perfect way of putting it, really, because like I think their song, like their the whole like discography, if you will, like it is so varied. You've got pop songs, and then you've got the more classic subtle songs like While My Guitar Gently Weeps and stuff like that, which, it just has such a wide layer of songs in there. So I think, as you said perfectly, it is for everyone, and everyone can enjoy a song from the Beatles.
Yeah. Uh, so just to get back to the sort of narrative of the film, as I said, I do think that Nigel deserves better than Spinal Tap, but I can't, disagree that the moment where they reunite and play guitar together was incredibly heartwarming.
Oh yeah, and it was I think it was a really cool choice to see like them they their takeoff in, I think it's Japan at the end of the film, and that is
Yeah,
interesting because like it's sort of their, I suppose like it's a metaphor for them, the new horizons. They're onto new pastures and stuff, and it is sort of like the grass is always greener on the other side for them. So for them to explore a potential career in Asia, I think would be interesting.
yeah. I mean, I think that this film's perfectly open to a sequel. I'm sure that they've, developed sequels and they've just realized that they can't replicate the
Yeah.
success, or they didn't
Mhm.
want to tarnish the legacy of such a culturally important film. But I think that there's definitely room to develop this.
Oh yeah, big time, man, big time. And like I was interested to hear your thoughts. Like, would you describe this film as like a cult classic, sort of?
Yeah, I don't think that it had huge financial success, but I mean, I think it was pretty much, well received. But now it has, a huge cultural fandom, and has amassed a huge cult following. To be honest, didn't know much about this film, so it's not like a cult film in the sense where I pretty much know every part of the plot. I've never seen The Room, and I don't need to because it has such a large cult following that
Yeah.
people will just tell you the plot. So I know everything about that film, but this wasn't such a cult film that it isolated me from being able to enjoy it.
Hmm. Yeah, completely, man. I agree. I'm actually really glad I watched this, because it is, as you said, it did sort of pave the way for the genre, and without this film, you probably wouldn't get the other two films that we're going to talk about today. So credit to Rob Reiner again. He's just so underrated, and understated as a director.
Yeah, I fully agree. One thing that I would have liked to have seen in the film was sort of a further portrayal of, maybe drugs and the media and the further downsides to fame aside from just, waning popularity.
Yeah.
Like, would that have been something that you would have liked to have seen further
Absolutely,
explored?
absolutely. Like, as you said, I would have quite liked, as their fame is sort of spiraling in a downward trend, maybe like I don't want them to resort to drugs, but I'd like them to sort of reflect the sort of reflect the actual world that exists in this celebrity society and Hollywood society. Like, you know, I'd imagine drugs and alcoholism, you know, they are rife within that industry, especially in the 1980s. So it would, as you said, I would have loved to see that as well, just to give the film another layer to it.
Yeah, I do think it would have added realism to the music industry, as you said. So yeah, that's just something I would have liked to have seen explored. And those guys just seem like that kind of
Yeah,
rock star.
yeah. I mean,
So
we
I
see,
was surprised to not see that explored.
yeah, like I think we see, I think it's David or Nigel. It's one of, I think it's either David or Nigel. Like they're
Do you know the
complaining of like,
difference?
yeah, like miniature bread or something. I was like, brilliant.
Oh yeah, that
But
was wonderful.
I would have even liked to see, you know, a potential rival band come into the play and sort of see how the older band who have been had success for longer sort of deal with new rivals who are like, because we sort of see that in Popstar a little bit, uh, and
Yeah,
with Connor for real, and I'm trying to think of the other guys like
Hunter the Hungry,
Hunger, yeah, or something.
Hunter the Hungry. Yeah,
Hunter the Hungry, and like that him sort of like rise up during his tour. So I don't know. I just thought that would be an interesting layer for the film.
yeah, I fully agree. Did you have any further points on the film?
Um, I don't know. I thought like the mid section of the film was quite uneventful. I think when it gets into the actual performances, that's where it really peaks for me. And it's weird because for parts of the film, it's so realistic and vivid. You sort of forget you're watching a mockumentary. It sort of feels like you're actually watching something that's real. Because as you said, I wouldn't have known Spinal Tap didn't exist. I probably thought they would have existed. But no, I don't have any concluding points, mate. To be honest, like I just thought I had a great time with this. Anything from you?
Yeah. Well, sort of to continue what you're saying, like it sort of seems in the vein of like Blair Witch Project, where it's so it's so genuine that it actually has you question whether this is reality. Because
Mhm.
obviously, I assume that with the Blair Witch Project, they sort of created a website and a trailer, and people thought that the events were real because they were talked in a factual way, like they were talked about in a factual way.
Okay.
So people were actually nervous, and they're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you're glorifying this horrible case of a witch in the forest."
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was so ridiculous to see people take that seriously. But I think this is 100% a film that will be misinterpreted as real life
Yeah.
because it is just so well directed. But I feel like for a mockumentary, it kind of gets lost in that sometimes. I would sort of like to see sort of a comedic take of just that culture.
Completely, man. You've nailed it there because, as you said, I think you can get lost in the film and questioning its reality and stuff. But I suppose that's just credit to Rob Reiner as well for making it so like engaging and so sort of real that you sort of do question its integrity as I suppose as a mockumentary. But I actually don't have any more really points at all. But do you have anything further?
Just I was wondering, were there any songs that stood out to you that you remember that you enjoyed?
Ooh, what did I have at the start? I can't remember. Uh, no, I don't have any names of the songs in particular, but I did quite
The
like
one
the. Go ahead.
oh no, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna. I like the final one in Japan when they. I don't know whether it was the band getting back together, so to speak, but I don't know. I just like that one.
Yeah, I would say that my favorite was Stonehenge because they kind of write that off as disastrous. But the performance itself is hilarious with sort of the comically small prop. But
Yeah,
I mean,
the 18 inches.
even lyrically, I loved the song.
Yeah, like I thought that was definitely a high point for the film for sure. And I don't know what was it. Was there like a Jack the Ripper song as well or something?
I know there was one called Hellmouth, but yeah, I don't think I could recall any of the other ones because there were a couple, and I mean to call the like I'm gonna say something that may sound offensive, calling them like generic rock songs, but that's kind of the point.
Yeah,
This is
no,
just
completely.
one band in a sea of many. They're not. The point is that they're not really particularly unique.
Mhm.
So the only two songs that really stood out to me were Hellmouth uh and Stonehenge, but that was kind of because the performances didn't go down as they expected.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, mate, because like they are supposed to be, generic rock songs in that sense. And I kind of want to ask you, do you think bands are like a dying breed in the music industry? Because, we see a lot of successful solo artists now, rise up the ranks, especially in like the charts and stuff. Most famous artists now, your Lewis Capaldi's, Ed Sheeran's and stuff. So I don't know, because probably the most famous band right now, I'd probably say 1975, maybe. Would you say that's the biggest band right now?
Yeah, I'd say they're very popular, but yeah, I would say it is sort of a trend these days, because they're aware of, the money they can make and the media attention they can have if they have a very public breakup, and then all of the members have a solo career, and they're usually all quite successful. But it's really not my kind of music. But yeah, I do sort of agree with you that yeah, you don't really see bands forming these days aside from sort of K-pop groups and boy bands. There aren't really rock bands
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, even boy bands, probably the only band that could have maybe threatened, and I might get a lot of shit for this, but the only band that could have potentially threatened the Beatles' legacy was maybe One Direction, because they were so popular, like well, they're still popular now, but like, back 5-10 years ago, like they were at the peak. Now since I think they've split up, so it's interesting to see their solo career. Like they might come back together. It'll be interesting to see, but no, I think I really rate what you've said there, mate. Really insightful points.
Yeah, you too, my friend. So I'd love to hear your rating of the film.
So I've actually I never used to do this, but I've now put my rating and a little concluding point in my notes just so I don't forget. So
Sure.
I've defined the film. So I think it's defined its own genre, and for that massive kudos to Rob Reiner. I think this film is very self-aware, and for that I will give it an 8.5 out of 10. What would you give it, mate?
Lovely, my friend.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah, so broadly, I agree with you. It was a really fun time. It felt incredibly real, raw, gritty. It felt realistic to the bands that it was, at the expense of. So yeah, I had a great time with this film, and just another solid entry into Rob Reiner's filmography. So I would give it an 8.
That's great. Yeah, honestly, I thought your point's really, really great, like really interesting. And it is one of those films I think you could go back at a rewatch and notice something different. And there's a lot of talking points for the film, and I think it's really ahead of its time. There's a lot of things that you can definitely sort of see nowadays as well.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't think we'd have much to say for this film, and surprisingly, we've talked for quite a while on this
Yeah,
one.
yeah, we did, we did.
But yeah, so do you want to leap into what we do in the shadows?
Let's do it, mate. Let's do it. Like, I'm really excited for this one because it's very similar tonally, I suppose, to Popstar in the sense that it's probably more comedic than this is Spinal Tap.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't exactly try to convince you that this is real life. It shows them in a realistic context, but it doesn't try to trick you into believing that it's talking about real events.
Yeah.
Uh, I I think I'm gonna open with my general opinion on the
Yeah.
film,
Go for it,
and
mate.
it's not particularly positive.
Okay. Now I'm interested, mate. Go
I
for it.
I just didn't have a great time with this film. I've sort of been told that it's this fun, quirky indie film and it's hilarious, and I don't know. I just felt underwhelmed.
Okay.
How did you feel with your general thoughts on the film?
For me, I actually had a blast with it, but I can't 100% relate to criticisms of it because it does sort of feel, and this is might be quite weird to say, but it sort of reminded me of like an extended horrible history skit in the sense that like I think the humor is good and there is some adult humor in there, but there is a lot of like I don't know. I think tonally it's aimed at a younger audience than I would have expected it, given it's a Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement film. And like I think one thing I wanted to ask you, like I do you think Taika Waititi's in for a shout with being the best or maybe the most quirky films in the last 5 years?
Yeah, I sort of agree with you. Yeah, definitely visually and music wise and plot wise, yeah, I would agree with you that he's an incredibly quirky director and very possibly the most quirky director. Uh, I'd say the only person maybe on par with that is the director of The Lobster and The Favorite. But I mean, those films are more just bizarre and nonsensical. than they are, like fun and zany. I would say this is probably the least visually engaging film of
Yeah.
Taika Waititi's, just in that it's, I mean, obviously intentionally drab and absent of color.
Do you think he's overrated at all, or do you think? So I actually, I this is probably one of my favorite films, and I've only seen this in Ragnarok. Fair enough, but I actually preferred this to Thor Ragnarok.
Have you seen Jojo Rabbit?
Ah, but that's another. Did that come out at the start of this year? Didn't it? Was that with Scarlett Johansson as well?
Yeah, in the UK, it was released in January, so we didn't really get an opportunity to see it because
Yeah.
we were kind of swamped with work.
Yeah, we were busy
But
at that time, actually, weren't we?
but yeah, I mean, I would say I love Jojo Rabbit. I love Thor Ragnarok. So of the filmography of his that I've seen, this would be my least favorite. Oh,
Fair
I've also
enough.
seen Hunt for the Wilder People, which I would say would also go above this. That's also very inherently New Zealand,
Hmm.
just as this film is.
Yeah,
I also think that I may have watched like a German version of the
I
film
did. I did.
because
Yeah.
yeah, because like I thought, oh, maybe I'm mistaken and this is intentional, but then I looked up like the opening scene on YouTube and like all of the you know exposition cards were in English and the one
Yeah.
that I was watching was in German.
Yeah.
So
I got the rough
yeah,
idea of
so
it, but there was a little confusion there because I thought maybe it was intentional because I think Taika Waititi's character and actually all three of the main vampire cast were like sort of Eastern European, so I thought maybe that was
yeah,
intentional as
yeah,
well.
that's why I checked YouTube, but there's actually important context as to why the documentary is occurring
Hmm.
in the opening moments, which neither of us really understood, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just happy to go by your points as well, mate. 'Cause I'm really interested to hear your comments of the film because I probably kind of actually relate to them as well.
Well, I sort of felt that when they were in their home, obviously this genre is entirely different because it's a horror comedy mockumentary, which hasn't really been seen, well, that I haven't seen before. I'm sure that it has been done before, but it would be a rarity of the genre.
Hmm.
So when they were sort of in their house, it kind of just felt like a bog standard mockumentary. But I don't know, there was sort of a charm to when they were, in full vampire get-ups out within the public, because
Absolutely.
this is sort of the first time that I've seen, like a public that's aware of vampires and just doesn't give a shit. Like it
Yeah,
felt really refreshing
it
to,
did.
for them to announce that they're vampires and no one care.
Yeah, I love that detail, mate, and I love how it sort of builds a sense of community and like the supernatural world. There's a bit of exposition where it says like there's 60 to 70 vampires in the Greater Wellington City area, which I thought was really I'm glad they didn't just limit it to like the four vampires that well five vampires that we see in the film because it is refreshing. I think we see like a supernatural gala as well at the end. I thought was brilliant. And I do like that there is sort of like a horror world. I think we see zombies in there and witches. So I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I fully agree. Uh, I thought that, obviously a big character in the film is the character of Nick, who
Yeah,
is introduced maybe a third or so into the film. And I was concerned by the fact that he was completely unconcerned about the all the vampires that were chasing him. Like
yeah.
he's just made a new friend in like Jocelyn or whatever her name was, and he just sees her being fully eaten on a table, and he just seems fully unconcerned.
The film is so understated in how it deals with murder. Like I think is it Vialgo is Taika Waititi's character?
Yeah, again, I didn't feel as invested in this film. I didn't I don't know all the characters' names, but yeah, Viago, I think.
Viago, and like he just takes a date home and just starts. He just kills her. Like I think he plucks an artery and there's blood all over him. I thought that was brilliant. And like
Yeah, I really enjoy how nonchalant they are about
yeah.
just like that it's not a moral quandary that they're eating humans. It's just an issue that they have blood on their sofa.
Yeah, and no, I'm interested to hear like who was your favorite character of the film? Because there's so many good ones,
My
I think.
favorite,
So
in my opinion, the only character that I really enjoyed was Stu.
Stu is a legend. I love Stu. Love him.
I don't know. I've said this to you before that I sort of just really resonate with side characters. I often say on a TV show if like a character appears for one episode, I'm immediately like, on the Wikipedia of that series, like
Yeah,
seeing if they have like
yeah,
a future in the show and then when their next appearance is.
I love that.
Like it's so weird that I just connect with the side character. So Stu is literally probably the least developed character. He's made to be the least interesting character, but he just seems like a great dude.
He
I
does.
just had only good feelings about him.
Yeah, he's actually a nice guy as well because he sets up internet and stuff for the vampires, and he seems like a generally lovely man until he gets turned into a werewolf, I think. But
Yeah,
I quite liked my favorite character in the film was Jackie, sort of the human that does errands for the vampires. I quite liked her character. I thought she was quite funny. But also
yeah,
it's
because you sort of see her move to like the suburbs, and it's meant to be like a really cheery life. It's almost like American Beauty.
it
Everything
is
we watch now is just going to be compared to American
I
Beauty,
know.
just the emptiness of the suburbs. But for her, instead of being attracted to an underage girl, she's like, I want to be a vampire.
I know. And like there's something about Jermaine Clement as an actor, and I think he co-directed this or had written it or something.
Yeah, yeah,
And the only other project I think I've seen him in is Legion, and he is fantastic in that. And he's him and Taika Waititi just have that like charisma and aura about them. I think as maybe that's the New Zealand charm. I don't know, but they're just I love them
yeah,
both.
yeah. I fully agree that he's really charming and sort of. I'm sure you're aware of like the TV series that was adapted off the back of this,
Yeah,
and a huge part of that is Matt Berry
yeah, love
from
him.
IT Crowd, and I think that they have sort of the exact same energy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like Matt Berry is probably he's one of my favorite actors as well, so especially in British TV. And as you like, that's a really interesting observation. They really are quite similar, even looks wise. They're quite similar, you know.
Yeah, I agree. And they seem to have sort of similar comedic timing, and they just have that undeniable charm.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
So there's a devastating moment of the film where Nick finds out that he can no longer eat chips, and he claims that this is his favorite food, but it took him 2 months to find out, and I just don't think he's committed to his favorite food.
Yeah, yeah. If your favorite food, you eat it on a regular basis, don't you?
Yeah, that's the biggest criticism of the film. That felt inauthentic to me. I
It
want to see that man chomping down on chips right before he's murdered.
did. Man, like Nick is actually he's one of those characters I didn't think anything of him when he was on screen because I thought the character was just going to go nowhere, but he's actually pretty integral to the film, surprisingly.
Yeah, yeah. I just assumed that he was going to be immediately dispatched, and then yeah, he's a huge part of the film. Uh, and obviously, one of the biggest blunders of the film is him indirectly causing the murder of Peter.
Yeah.
Uh, and I just have to say that is one of my favorite scenes in this film. Just how on fire he is. He's just so on fire.
But
I
Peter
loved
actually
it so
scares
much.
Peter scares the shit out of me. He's like he actually has the visual effects of that are good, to be fair.
Yeah, because he's sort of meant to be, like Nosferatu, like the very OG vampire, and
Mm.
I loved the prosthetic
Yeah.
creation of that character.
It's so interesting that you say like Peter's like fire death is your favorite scene in the film because it's actually mine as well, and especially like when the police come over to the house and like inspect and
Yeah,
like you think they're gonna point out his charred body, but like no smoke detectors or fire alarms or
I
whatever.
know.
I love that.
Like, are we genuinely like unwell? Because like it just seems like for the last week we've just talked about like the most brutal violence, and we're like that was hilarious.
Yeah, I know, but like it's just this film just does like the simple things really well. Even the effects of the flying I think are pretty great as well. And you got to feel bad for Viago's love story. It reminded me of Captain America himself with Peggy. 96-year-old woman. And no, I'm glad they got together. I'm not sure that I am glad they got together in the end. That was maybe a point in the film I didn't really like.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciated like the tragic romance. Obviously, we're talking about this film quite seriously. Obviously, this is all a joke. Like
Yeah,
it's all the entire movie is the butt of its own joke.
yeah,
So yeah, I found it quite hilarious that he had turned the 96-year-old woman into a vampire.
yeah. No, it was good because like this film is so well written as well, and the script is great. Like there's so many great one-liners in there as well. Like there's so many great quotes.
I fully agree, and the character of Nick, as I said, was responsible indirectly for Peter's death. And I just think that Nick is a colossal douche. And I think that he deserved a worse fate than being banished. Like, I think that they should have murdered him.
Yeah, like don't they do like a proclamation of shame where they just put him in a circle and go shame, shame, shame. He
I
should have
assume
been banned.
that was maybe sort of a reference to Game of Thrones. I don't know if you've seen the scene where Cersei is being marched down the street with like bells clanging and them yelling shame. But yeah, that was sort of a popular thing from Game of Thrones, and I think this was maybe a loose parody of that. And yeah, I found that hilarious.
Yeah. And this film's, I guess, it sort of treats being a vampire like some sort of reward. Like they say they'd rather kill Nick than have him become a vampire. Like, would you like to be a vampire? Do you think it'd be cool? Because I think it would be interesting. But then if it's technically cannibalism, so maybe not.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say there's a balance. There's no balance. I would hate pretty much every aspect of it. There's a point at which I would maybe want to stop looking old. Say if I got into my 30s, I might want to stop looking old, but I still want to die after like 80 to 100 years.
Yeah.
I don't want to have an eternal life. I want my time to come to an end eventually, of natural causes.
Yeah.
And I don't want to watch everyone around me die, and I don't want to eat blood. I don't want to drink blood or kill
Same.
humans. So well, you said that, Matthew. You seem quite enthusiastic about it
I think it'd be
at the
cool. Like
beginning. You're like, yeah, sounds great.
maybe for a day, but I wouldn't drink blood or anything just for the day. I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, if we could have the compromise in Twilight where you can drink animal blood, would
Yeah.
you consider it?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, it seems disgusting. I don't like the thought of drinking blood. It seems vile, doesn't it?
But I guess your taste buds change when you turn to a vampire. So
True.
I guess it's only the moral quandary. I assume it just tastes delicious.
Yeah. Yeah. That is true. Like, I suppose this film, like, it is so self-aware of like the silliness and the goofiness of vampire lore, and like credit to Taika and Jermaine Clement because like they sort of like refresh the vampire genre, so to speak.
Yeah, I had a brief point on that. This is gonna be another classic where I can't find the point that I've written. Yeah, it is undoubtedly original, but I just didn't. Yes, it is an entirely new take on the vampire genre. We don't see vampire comedies. The closest thing would be like Johnny Depp in Dark Shadows, where it's a dark comedy. This, I think, doesn't even really stretch into that. I think it's
Mhm.
pretty much just straight up laughs.
Yeah.
Uh, but I just didn't enjoy the film to the degree that I thought I would.
That's fair enough, mate. And like, do you sort of feel like it loses its inherent like genre, which is like the mockumentary? Is it? I suppose there's no real reason why they're being interviewed, is there? Because I don't know.
I suppose it's just because it was a secret society and they were the only group dumb enough to agree to a documentary.
Yeah, maybe. I
That,
I
that,
do
that
I
was
do
some
agree.
important context that you missed in the opening in the
Maybe.
opening bit.
Like, but I don't know. I do agree. Sort of. I think it maybe does get bogged down in too much of the comedy, and it doesn't feel like a mockumentary to me. Really, it just feels like a comedy, sort of.
Yeah, I agree. So throughout the film, it's sort of teased of the amazing battle between the Beast and Vlad,
Yeah.
and then it is finally revealed that that's actually just his nickname for his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I wasn't surprised, but I was still underwhelmed.
Disappointed. Yeah.
How did you feel?
I thought it was quite a funny
Yeah, I was
reveal at
like, I'm
first.
looking forward to them like breaking out the big special effects.
Yeah, I was happy at first, but then like when I realized I thought maybe there's gonna be like I suppose there is sort of like a werewolf confrontation, but it's mostly done sort of off screen, in the darkness. So I suppose I was a little disappointed because the effect from what you see of the effects, I think they're pretty great. So it's pity you don't get more of them.
Yeah, I think they took full advantage of the idea of a documentary crew because then they're like, oh well, like, we can just do shaky cam on
Yeah.
the werewolf fight, and I think that was a big cop out where you know the idea that they were making a mockumentary really lended a hand to them because they meant
Mhm.
that they didn't have to spend as much.
Definitely.
But I was underwhelmed by the like not necessarily the whole of the third act, but certainly the final confrontation.
Definitely, mate, definitely. And I don't know, like there. I think that one of my favorite scenes in the film is when Viago sort of puts the face of his crush on the inside of his coffin just before he goes to sleep. I thought that was really creepy, but really funny.
And then did you notice the subtle shaking of his coffin?
I was just like, oh, but then like, there's so many funny scenes in here. Like, there's one point Jackie, I think she goes in for the kiss with Deacon, like as she just enters the doorway, and he just suddenly rebuffs her. So poor Jackie.
Was that not maybe her like saying bite my neck, or do you think it was
Or maybe
a bit
actually
more
maybe true, yeah,
flirtatious?
true. You never know, I suppose, but like I don't know if this is a coincidence, but the character, like, there's a do you know the Fallout games, like the
I'm aware of them, yeah.
yeah, so like Fallout 4 came out in 2014, I think, and this film I think was 2014, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And there's a character called Deacon in that, and like he sort of he's like belongs to like a secret society as well, and he sort of like dresses up and in different disguises. So I don't know if maybe the character from that was inspired by this, sort of in the vein that like they dress up and disguise themselves, I suppose, like especially like there is a lot of montages of them like getting ready and stuff in different outfits, and I don't know if it was like a detail that was inspired by that, but I suppose if they came out in the same year, it is hard to orchestrate that, so maybe not.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it's perfectly easy to, obviously the game development takes a while, but I mean, to just reskin a character and change their name, I'm sure
Yeah,
isn't a
maybe.
huge overhaul. So yeah, that's very interesting. Uh, I have to say, aside from the Peter on fire scene, I would say my favorite scene in the film is Deacon's monologue of like the the brutally sad nature of the passage of time, because I thought it was a genuinely tender moment, and I'd say it was the part of the film that actually made me feel something, which I didn't get from the rest of the film. I sort of chuckled here and there throughout the film, but that was the only moment where I felt something.
Absolutely, bro. I completely agree. You've nailed it there, because at the sort of, I suppose the film does sort of like develop the confrontation between Nick and Deacon. So it was nice to see Deacon have like a tender moment in there, because I don't know, maybe I would have liked to see the film sort of display the more human and vampire conflict in there, and how maybe they're mistreated and discriminated against. Because I think I would have been like a deeper layer for the mockumentary.
Yeah, I agree. Because obviously they present Stu as their first human friend, but I would have liked to see a bit of backstory as to why that is.
Yeah.
And obviously we see in the Masquerade Ball that it is frowned upon because if you encounter a human, you should eat them. But yeah, I would have liked to see sort of the levels of classism. I
Yeah.
think I don't know if that's a bit like too far,
Too
because like
deep.
in the end, yeah, it is a comedy. We don't need to necessarily see a classist regime.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I suppose it is, as you said though, like it is. I suppose it is hard to criticize in mockumentary inherently.
Yeah. So are there any further points you had? Because I kind of want to talk a bit about the proposed sequel.
Here, mate, crack on. I'm really interested about that. Crack on, mate.
So a few years ago, it was announced that they were developing a new film as a sequel to this film based on the vampires seen in this movie, uh, and it's tentatively called "We Are Wolves," uh, but it it has been said by Taika Waititi that it's basically never going to happen because I guess him and Jimmy Clement just don't have time to do it.
Mm.
He compared it to a dad not coming home at Christmas. He desperately wants to, but he has other shit to do.
That's dark.
I know. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get to see a sequel of this film. But if the viewers out there have a craving for more of this universe, there's at least the TV series to watch.
Is the TV series like a follow-on, or is it what sort of way is it?
Well, instead of being set in New Zealand, it's set in America. So I think it's very possible that it's set in the same universe. I don't think that there's been any explicit interconnectivity, but I have not seen the series yet. And despite me not loving this film, I'd be perfectly open to watching the series to
Yeah,
gauge it tonally, or see if they develop the ideas seen in the film in an even more intriguing and hopefully comedic way.
completely, bro. Completely, you've nailed it there, because I think this film has a lot of a lot of room for like a potential sequel. You know, and there's so much talent on board there. Like I think Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi together, they have the potential to make a absolutely hilarious script. I'd love to see them work on like a buddy cop movie or something like that, and because they're both so talented. So yeah, I'd love to see a sequel personally. Yeah,
Yeah. Did you have anything further, or did you want to jump into ratings?
I'm just happy to jump into ratings. But what would you give it out of 10?
Well, as I said, I appreciate its, refreshing nature towards the genre of vampire films. And I like how the characters did pander towards the camera, so it felt like an authentic mockumentary, whilst obviously not involving realistic characters. Uh, so I enjoyed the film in part, and appreciated the more sideline characters, but I didn't love it the way I expected to. I didn't love the comedy in the way that many people seem to. So, with respect to the filmmakers and the film itself, I'm going to give it, I think, a fair 7.
I mean, that was really great. I relate to a lot of your points you said, and I think maybe because Taika Waititi has such an established and esteemed filmography, maybe I suppose did you feel like you went in with high expectations for it?
Well, yeah, my brother's sort of a big fan of these sort of quirky indie comedies, and I think he had maybe oversold it, and it just wasn't for me.
Fair enough, mate. But I thought your point's really insightful and intriguing, mate, because I agree. I think it maybe does get bogged down in the comedy too much, but I thought it was so well written and the effects were great and it was really smart in its humor. So I'd probably give it. I'll go for a 9. I go for a 9.
Perfectly
But
fair.
that
Yeah,
was an interesting chat. It's a really quirky movie, I suppose.
yeah. I would say that the first two I thought that we would struggle to discuss because I think yeah, as we've both agreed, a mockumentary is difficult to talk about,
Yeah.
which makes me even more excited to talk about our next film, Popstar Never Stop Never Stopping,
This is one
as
of
it is
the
one of my favorite films.
mate, I can see why. It is so good. And before we, I suppose, do you want to get into a chat about like the context behind Lonely Island and stuff, or do you want to hop right into the film because you
Oh
actually
yeah,
introduced me to Lonely Island?
we can talk about that.
Oh man, you
Yeah,
introduced me to them. So good. Go ahead, crack on, mate.
so I watched this film for maybe the third or fourth time this morning. Not the third or fourth time this morning,
No,
but
I know
for
what
the
you mean.
third or fourth time. Uh, and I don't remember whether this was my introduction to the Lonely Island or whether I'd maybe heard perhaps Jizz in My Pants. Well, perhaps I think that was maybe recommended to me by someone on my Brooklyn Nine-Nine Facebook fan group because Andy Samberg is obviously the star of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is undoubtedly one of my favorite TV shows of all time, and it's his performance in that that truly carries that show. His performance and Andre Braugher's performance are two of some of the best comedy performances I've ever seen. So when I heard that, as a side project, Andy Samberg had a comedy trio that did music. I couldn't wait to hear what they had to offer. So when I'd listened to the music, I showed you some of it, and I
So
think we
good.
both agreed that the music videos are always hilarious. And I think
Absolutely.
Jizz in My Pants was the first one that I played for you.
Yeah, it was my favorite, but this film, there's a song in here that you had played me before, but re-listening to it in this film, it's my new favorite for sure. Like there's so, and it's, I think, is it Andy Samberg? Yeah,
Yes.
I think he's a one of a kind actor for me because I think he's so underrated and understated, and I think he's one of the best comedic actors of the generation, and I haven't even seen him in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I just think, and for an actor to have a side project like that, it's really unheard of for me, because like, and this is, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I actually think his music's decent. I think the Lonely Island are generally good singers.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of, I don't think he's ever claimed to be a good singer, but they're undoubtedly incredible performers.
Yeah,
They're incredibly captivating. But I don't think any of them are amazing singers because I don't think any of them would claim to be. They're
mm,
comedians first and musicians
yeah,
second.
no, sure, yeah.
So they are great musicians. Singers, I don't know. It's arguable, but the music scene in this film is sort of mocking the pop genre, but they don't realize that they're actually creating really fun, enjoyable music.
Yeah, Like, what do you think about Andy Samberg? Like, do you think he is underrated in the industry?
Absolutely, because he's sort of been relegated to, you know, sort of, people say that, TV is the, death place of an actor. If you become a TV actor, you can't make a big transition to films. And unfortunately, that seems to be the case for Andy Samberg, because the most he really gets is like small parts in like garbage Adam Sandler films. I'd say his two biggest film roles were probably in Hot Rod, which is another Lonely Island project, that's starring all three of them. And then the other is probably That's My Boy with Adam Sandler, which is, one of the worst films ever made.
Mm.
So, I mean, for this talented an actor to not have a huge career is a massive disappointment. And yeah, I think he's probably one of the most underrated actors around.
Yeah, mate, that was really great because, like, what do you think it is about like the stereotype like you mentioned there about him being like relegated to a TV actor? Like, what do you think it is about like the stereotype of TV actors not being able to make the leap into movie production? Like, do you think there is a stereotype there that like sort of like a stay in your lane type deal where TV actors can only do TV?
Yeah, I do think it is that attitude, and I've never understood it, because
Yeah.
often, like, if you compare a film comedy and like a TV sitcom, the sitcom is often, far more funny. So I think that a lot of the biggest talent starts on TV and, comes back to TV because, they know that that's a good area for them to perform. So yeah, I've never understood it, and I don't know why. Yeah, they refer to it as, making the leap from TV to film. I mean, they're
Mhm.
obviously both hugely respected industries, but it does seem that often TV actors aren't allowed to have the wiggle room to do, whatever project they want to.
Completely, man. Completely. Like, what do you think that like the biggest star to make the transition between TV and movie is? Because it is hard to label one because there is so few. But I don't know. I think Chris Evans might have started his career on TV and then moved to movies, but that was a long time ago before it sort of became a stereotype to stay in your lane sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't think there are huge modern examples. Like the biggest one I can think of is probably Michael J. Fox moving from uh, Family Ties to films with Back to the Future.
Mm,
That
yeah.
was sort of like a huge transition for the time. Uh, Normally now it's actually more common for, a movie actor to come and do TV,
Yeah, it
because,
is. Yeah, actually, that's true.
you see that often, especially like with guest spots on sitcoms.
Mm,
And I think that's always interesting to see. But, I don't think it's because they respect the art form. I think it's usually for a paycheck or for
yeah,
like, social media attention.
yeah.
Uh, I
I
mean,
suppose
obviously,
we've.
there's no issue with doing a job just to get paid. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. I know what you mean. Like, I suppose we've seen it with like, I think John Krasinski has a series on Amazon TV. I think.
yeah. So obviously, his huge break was on The Office, and then he did a bit of film work, and then he started in his own interpretation of the Jack Ryan franchise by Tom Clancy, which is currently on Amazon Video. But he's still been able to maintain a career, but it's really because he made it for himself. It's because he went out and directed A Quiet Place that
Mhm.
he's a household name, uh, movie wise. So I think it's just that there's a stigma around TV actors moving to film unless they can create the opportunity for themselves.
Completely, man. Like, it is a really interesting discussion because I think there is definitely room for an overlap in there, and it is. I don't know why there is such a negative stereotype behind it because like I'd love to see Andy Sandberg in more bigger productions because him and the rest of the Lonely Island boys they're so funny, aren't they? They're just so great, so great comedic timing in there.
Yeah, definitely. I think sort of the success of Paul Rudd gives me hope
Yeah.
that
Mm.
that an actor like Andy Samberg can be taken seriously. And I mean, I'd even love to see him in a Marvel film.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, obviously that's not the be all end all of good cinematic filmmaking, but I'm sure that he would easily slot in as a comedic character akin to like Star Lord or Ant Man.
I think he would have been a perfect Star Lord. Actually, now that you mentioned, that's really interesting, mate. And there is so much like there's so many like comedic characters in the Marvel lore that I'd love to see him. Like Like, do you know the Mr. Immortal character from Marvel?
I don't think I'm familiar.
I think he'd be quite similar tonally to that because he's quite like a silly, goofy character, and I think Sandy Sandberg he's a very comedic guy. So no, I just love to see him in bigger things because he's such a talented guy, isn't he?
Yeah, I fully agree. So, did you want to jump into the narrative of the film?
Let's do it, bud. Let's do it.
So, this film has some like huge names in from the music industry,
Yeah, it does.
modern and older, and it was just really hilarious to see them uh, make fun of themselves because often celebrities don't seem to have that level of self-awareness.
Yeah. Mate, see when I saw like cameos from like Nas and Usher and Simon Cowell and stuff, I was like, I thought it was just gonna be them three basically, but then like I think we see like 50 Cent and Katy Perry and
Yeah,
Taylor Swift's Arrested for Murder off screen. I
yeah,
love that. I love that. And I'm actually, I assume they got a decent sized paycheck for just appearing in this, but even still, like, it's great to see like actors take the piss out of them or artists taking the piss out of themselves.
yeah. I thought it really added an incredible level of authenticity.
It did.
I mean, they can't have been paid too much because the budget was, for a mockumentary, the budget was very big. But for a film in general, it was $20 million.
Well, that's nothing, I suppose, when you credit the Marvel movies as well.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the film was a huge flop. I think it maybe made I don't these figure. It's one of these two figures, and they're drastically different. It was either that it made $2 million or like $9 million, but either way, it was a massive
Wow,
loss.
that's a pity, man.
Even
It
though
really is.
it was really well critically received, so I don't really see what the controversy behind it was.
Yeah, I have a question for you. Like, mockumentaries, I suppose, is sort of like it's an underrated genre because it's mostly sort of reserved for TV shows. I think since this is a Spinal Tap, I suppose like The Office is probably I haven't actually seen The Office, but I've been told it's sort of like a mockumentary in that sort of sense. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what do you think? Would you think that I think this is in their shout for like or in the running for like the most self-aware film of all time?
Yeah, I think it's really incredible. There's pretty much never a minute that goes by without a hilarious joke. That I don't really think any of the jokes fell flat, aside from maybe the scenes where it shows like CMZ and they're just kind of like
Yeah,
hysterically cackling, which is
yeah,
obviously an overtop parody of TMZ, but I just think that maybe missed the mark marginally.
yeah, yeah. Will Arnett was he the CMZ dude? Yeah.
Yeah, there was Will Arnett. There was Chelsea Peretti, who's also from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and the only person else whose name I know was Billy Eichner in that scene.
Wow. And I was actually surprised to see James Buckley in this. And I haven't seen him since The Inbetweeners, so it was great to see him get some work.
Have you seen the Inbetweeners?
I've seen half of season one, yeah. So not a
Oh, so
lot.
you're a boy of pure joy and spirit. I'm surprised that you've been tarred
Yeah,
by
I love it.
having seen the Inbetweeners.
I'm a big fan
I
because
love the Inbetweeners. I
so
love the
good.
Inbetweeners so much.
So I haven't actually seen the movies, but are they good?
No, they're not good.
Uh,
The first one's kind of okay, and then the second one's just really bad.
that's annoying because ever since James Buckley was on the True Geordie podcast, I thought I'd give Inbetweeners a go, and it was yeah, it's probably a staple of classic British comedy, isn't it?
Yeah, I fully agree. Wasn't that was that the podcast where he talked about like Tom Cruise holding his baby?
Yeah, yeah, brilliant, brilliant.
That was a great story. Check out TG2 for clips from the True Geordie podcast.
Absolutely. I will link that in the description below, guys.
Lovely. So again, can't read my own handwriting.
Oh man, mine's terrible. Mine is so bad.
Yeah. So the first song that we really see as the big opener of the film is "Humble,"
Yeah,
featuring Adam Levine, and it's meant to be a whole parody of the genre of like say Eminem, sort of like bragging about himself, but trying to maintain an air of humility.
yeah.
But I mean, I just thought it was such a great song.
It actually is. Like Adam Levine, he has a great voice. Maroon Five or a great band, but I don't know what it is. Like Actually, there's some beats at the bops of this I actually generally like. What is your favorite song in this? I want to know. I'm interested.
I mean, I really don't know if they mean for the songs to be good. I know that with like Equal Rights is meant to be an offensive song, but I love it. And then, well, I mean, all of the songs from Conquest are meant to be offensive, and that's why the album itself flopped. But I just love every single song in this film. Uh, but I would say my favorite is probably Finest Girl, which I think is
Yeah, I
probably
love that.
your favorite.
Yeah, Finest Girl is my new favorite.
You have to watch the music video as well.
Mate, it's just the line "SEAL Team 69 executing the hits" that just makes me piss myself laughing. That's not even. I don't
It's
think that's
some of the
supposed to be the
best
funniest.
lyrics.
Yeah, I don't think that's even supposed to be like the funniest punchline of that song. It's just that line in it. It's just so good.
Yeah, because there's some points where it's like just crude, and I think that's meant to be the funniest parts. But like it's I was gonna say the more subtle lines. I wouldn't say Seal 69 executing the hit is subtle,
Yeah,
but I don't think it's intended to be the funniest part. But it is.
it is. It is, man. Totally. And to be fair, I quite like Equal Rights as well. I think the music video in that is quite is quite funny.
Yeah, uh, and I have to say, Humble. Like I would say, Humble does sound like the most authentic one. If we're talking about mockumentary wise, it sounds like one that could actually be released and you wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, yeah,
Obviously, if we had Finest Girl and Equal Rights released as serious tracks, there would be uproar. But Humble does just seem like an ironic take on real world music.
oh yeah, completely, man. Yeah, you've nailed it there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the only criticism that we actually hear about equal rights is from Ringo Starr when he says that gay marriage is allowed now, which I mean isn't true for like so many countries.
Yeah, I
So
know.
I mean, if the biggest offense is that the whole song is kind of redundant, it isn't really for quite a lot of countries.
Yeah, that's a crazy thought, isn't it, man? To be honest, like it's only recently been legalized over here.
Yeah,
Is it legalized over here? Yeah, it is, isn't it?
they have had like the first marriage ceremonies, but I haven't really heard about it since the first one took place on Valentine's Day.
That's a perfect day for it as well. Poetic.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
I think the first one maybe like that was when it was officially. I don't know if they ever used the word legalized because we have a lot of political people who are against the idea of gay marriage. So I think it was maybe the concept of it being quote unquote decriminalized,
Yeah.
which
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
insensitive to say the least.
Oh yeah. Like, and see, in terms of like the relationships that the film presents and stuff between members of the band, like, Connor and Owen, their relationship, it kind of reminds me of Rhett and Link, the YouTubers, in a weird way. Like, I love that.
Which one do you think is which?
I think Connor is. I think Connor's. I want to say Rhett. Yeah, I think Connor's Rhett and Owen's Link.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do see that. That wasn't a parallel that I would have drawn because I'm not hugely familiar with them, but I definitely see it now that you say. Sort of the more bigger bravado as opposed to sort of the quieter, more contemplative one.
And I tell you what, mate, I think Connor for real is generally a good name for an artist.
Yeah, I mean, it's nowhere near as dumb as plenty of musicians. Like, I just recently watched Jack Mate's video on Machine Gun Kelly, and I think that is, quite possibly the dumbest name to have emerged from
Yeah.
rap. But I mean, there are plenty of ridiculously stupid ones, and Connor for real. If they were trying to like, if they were trying to fully take the piss out of the genre, I think they could have gone further with making it, dumber if they
Yeah,
wanted to.
no, I agree. I agree, man. That Jack Mate Machine Gun Kelly video is it makes me I don't even know Machine Gun Kelly that like I don't know him. I don't listen to his music, but it just makes me dislike him.
Yeah, he's just like looking into the middle distance while smoking a joint. Like that's what I aspire to be. Just like I
I,
don't give a shit.
I know, man. Like, oh god, poor Jack Mate.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, the film is obviously centered around Connor for real, But I have to say, Lawrence doesn't seem to be living too bad a life. Sort of the quiet farm life doesn't seem too bad.
Yeah, the quiet farm. I wouldn't mind the quiet farm life. It does. It does appeal to me, especially in a cool American ranch like that. And he's cooking.
Yeah,
He's cooking up marijuana, I think. So hey.
yeah. I was gonna say your dream. Uh, but but yeah, maybe that's the point that and the bird shitting on me would probably be the two parts that I wouldn't implement.
We all know you hate birds, don't we?
Yeah, famously.
I think this film really. Sorry, wait, was I going to interrupt you
I
there?
was not. I was not going to say anything. No.
I think this film's got so many like really great side characters in there that are. I mean, I think we see like Connor's for real strike up a deal with Aquaspin, and there's so many funny, and even his side crew. James Buckley is great in there. And was Justin Timberlake the chef?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
love that. And was Bill Hader in this as well as a character?
yeah. He was the guitar tech.
Wow, that's because is he a very well known actor? The only film I think I've seen him in is It Chapter 2 is he seems pretty a very talented actor.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Hader is a guy, an actor that I really appreciate, and you hear his name constantly. But the only project that I could connect him to is this, It, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where he only appears for one episode.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, he is a hugely popular comedian, hugely popular actor, but I guess I'm just not familiar enough with his filmography.
Yeah, but like he is a very talented guy, and he's only really in this scene or only in this film for one scene, really, isn't he? So he is
Yeah,
underrated.
he doesn't play a huge role.
Hmm.
I have a question about culture to ask you based on a piece of music in this film.
Go for it, man.
Uh, is the Mona Lisa indeed an overrated piece of shit?
It is an overrated piece of shit. I don't like it.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with the overrated part. I don't think it's a piece of shit
No, I'm
because
being crude there. It's
yeah,
good. It is good. Yeah.
it's a good painting. It is well painted. It looks like a woman. I have to give it all of those pluses. But, admittedly, the only reason that it's famous is because it was stolen and then returned. So, that's how it gained mass popularity. But, I mean, it's no better than, thousands of other paintings, and yet it
Yeah.
remains to be the most famous painting of all time. It took so many decades for like Van Gogh to be recognized as one of the best painters of all time, and
Yeah.
then it just seems that the Mona Lisa has somehow towered over the fame of his best works.
Yeah. And like we know like we're good friends with very talented painters and stuff, and their stuff is just as good in my opinion. Like, and art is subjective, isn't it? But excuse me.
Art is subjective, but yeah, theirs is better.
Yeah. And no, they're very talented. And I don't know, like the Mona Lisa is good. I'm being crude, of course, and it is good. But I don't know. I've always been more of a Picasso man.
Oh, you're more into
The shapes and stuff.
obscure, weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I like his
No,
stuff.
I've got to say Vincent is my man.
Yeah, he's
Starry Night Over the Ron, my favorite painting of all time.
Sunflower's pretty good. That's a good show, actually. Sunflower's pretty good. Is that a painting of his? Yeah, just making sure.
It is, yes.
I like
And
that.
water lilies, and then he did various portraits. I mean, often because he was so wildly unpopular, he couldn't afford to pay medical bills. So he one of his most famous paintings is a portrait he did of a doctor, and he gave that to the doctor in lieu of payment.
Wow, he's so talented. And like, was it Van Gogh who got cut his ear off, or was that Da Vinci?
No, that was Vincent, and he cut it off and produced it to a prostitute. For some reason, we
Hey,
don't actually know.
fair
There's
enough.
a lot. I mean, we've definitely departed from talking about Popstar, so let's just talk
No,
about this for a minute.
I'll time
Uh,
code this and painting chat and the show.
yeah, yeah. So sort of like the timeline of like his last few weeks of life are kind of murky, and his cause of death is kind of questionable. As to whether he shot himself or whether he was shot, or a few concepts have been thrown around, and sort of like a very weird alternate take is used in like the the Willem Dafoe film At Eternity's Gate.
Mm-hmm.
That was sort of a recent film, and it sort of it loosely follows his life, but then the ending takes a weird turn where they use sort of like a conspiracy theory but present it as like the definitive
Oh,
death.
okay.
I
Okay.
mean, it's very possible that, well, I mean, it's not very possible. It's as likely that that happened as any
Mhm.
other explanation. It's
Yeah.
just weird that they present that as like objective truth.
Yeah. Like I always remember like the Doctor Who episode with, I think it's Vincent Van Gogh, and
Yeah,
like he's taken into the future and sees the fame and the glory behind his creations. I just love that personally.
yeah, that's probably my favorite moment in Doctor Who. I obviously I haven't seen many of the Doctors. I've just seen David Tennant and Matt Smith, but that was definitely my favorite moment of the Matt Smith era, at least. To see him sort of like crying at finally seeing someone like something that he worked his entire life at.
Yeah, completely, man, completely. But yeah, like
Back to
back to
Popstar.
Popstar. I'm just happy to go by your notes a bit as usual. Just hear your interesting points.
Well, I have to say that whilst his proposal to Ashley Wednesday had ulterior motives to distract from his tucked-in penis incident, I have to admit that the proposal itself was beautiful.
It was.
That sort of seems like, minus the wolves,
I
dream
like wolves
proposal.
though. I like maybe not vicious wolves, but wolves are nice. And I don't like chained up wolves, but I like wolves. You know.
Yeah, I don't really see how he caught the flack for the clearly untrained wolves. Like he hired them from a company, yet he takes all the shit from it. I don't really understand that.
Yeah, and what wasn't it like? Doesn't Seal like have scars all over his face? And then Connor's like, "How did you get them?" He's like, "Wolves."
Wolves. Yeah, obviously, they are not man-made scars. They're from lupus. But it was sort of interesting to see Seal sort of go into. I'm sure there are conspiracy theories about that kind of thing when there is obviously a true and
Wait,
upsetting answer.
are
But
those?
it was interesting. It was interesting to watch him make fun of himself.
I didn't realize they
Yeah.
were real.
Oh yeah, they're real. Yeah. He's yeah, that's a huge part of his image.
Really? Like, where did he get them from?
He had lupus, which is a illness, and I don't know how that it causes scarring sometimes.
Well, I actually didn't know that. Wow. But like, I suppose credit to him for like being very, like taking the piss
Self
out of himself.
self-deprecating of it.
Self-deprecating,
Yeah,
exactly. Like, well, I actually did. Wow, I'm shocked. I didn't actually know that.
yeah. The
Interesting.
more you know,
More
kids.
you know, yeah, true.
Yeah. So we flash to a scene of Connor for real attending the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, a presenter that I'm
The
not a fan of.
disdain in your voice there. You're really, oh, I could
Yeah,
tell you don't like it.
yeah, but we see them perform the pre-mentioned donkey role, and I feel that it sort of predicted the popularity of flossing. But this is sort of meant to be, like the peak mocking point. This is meant to be as ironic as it gets, but yet this dance is still much more appealing than flossing. Like I feel
Yeah,
like they were saying this is the worst case scenario. This is the most annoying popular dance that you could see, and yet it's still 10 times less
I
embarrassing than
know,
watching
I
someone
know.
floss.
I suppose like dancing, like cool, like modern, like 21st century dancing probably started with Gangnam Style. Maybe is the biggest one I can think of. I suppose it's transitioned now
You
to the
say
floor.
cool.
No,
You
but
should
like
put quote marks around it.
cool, but like popular at least, because like
Yes.
Gangnam Style was huge, and I mean it still is, I'd imagine. But like, yeah, I suppose it's sort of transitioned to the floss now, and even that's it's not like as popular as it used to be. So this photo, as you said, man, it's very self-aware and it's probably ahead of its time in predicting that. Yeah,
Yeah. Uh, we see one of the most tragic moments in film history, the death of Maximus. Uh,
actually broke my heart.
I would say it is actually one of the most tragic passings of an animal death in film. I honestly I felt nothing in Marley and Me. Charlotte's Web. Who gives a shit? But Maximus with his ashy scales that got to me.
Yeah, I related so much to that, to be honest, and like I don't know. I like turtles. I like sorry tortoise. I think he's a tortoise. I like tortoises. So I was sad. I was a sad one. Although,
Fair.
but one thing I wanted to ask you was, are those Andy Samberg's real tattoos?
No, no, not at all.
Justin Bieber
No,
parodies then?
yeah, they are once again mocking Justin Bieber. And I was surprised that Justin Bieber agreed to be in the film because he has a brief cameo. I assume it's perhaps just he isn't self-aware enough to recognize that the whole film is parodying him and the type of rapper slash pop stars like him.
Yeah, true. That is true, mate.
I do have to say that the Style Boys reuniting at the end with the "I'm a Style Boy for life," one of the most heartwarming moments in film history.
Yeah. Michael Bolton can sing. Like, holy shit, he's got a good voice.
Yeah, what, like, he is a singer? Like,
I know. Like,
how
I
did you
just
think he would be in his family? You're like, what a surprise! He can sing.
no, he's still got it though. To be fair to him, like sometimes you see like certain like as they get like AC/DC probably don't sound the same now when they're touring as they did back in
True.
the 80s. But like Michael Bolton he's still got it, man.
Yeah, I mean, he can hit an incredible high note,
Oh,
but he's performed with the Lonely Island before. Uh, when you get a chance to look up Jack Sparrow,
really?
because it's just sort of him reciting lines from his favorite films, and
That's
yeah, it's really fun to watch.
like,
I mean, often, like, obviously, the Lonely Island are natural born comedians. You know, they're, as I said, comedians first, musicians second. So
mhm.
often, often the music videos are actually as funny or more funny than the music itself. So I think whenever you hear a Lonely Island song, you should definitely watch the video that accompanies it.
Absolutely, man. Because I think there a lot of their humor, like as you sort of mentioned or like alluded to, it is sort of like visual humor as well, isn't it? So like there's so many layers to their comedy, really.
Yeah, I felt bad, like, looking away to write notes because I know that you sort of like pause the film and then write notes, but often I don't leave myself enough time to do that. So like I'm just writing as the film's going on. But it was kind of difficult to do that in these films because as they're acting as a fake documentary, a lot of it is visual humor,
Mhm.
uh, and at least it's not slapstick, so it's visual humor that I enjoy.
Yeah. To be honest, mate, I've got into the routine of doing the same thing, just making notes while the film's going on as well. And I wouldn't usually do that, but and this film is really fast paced as well, which is it's unusual for a mockumentary. From the three that we've seen, for me it was
Yeah.
unusual. And I wanted to ask you, like, do you have any favorite quotes or lines in the movie? Because there's just so many crackers in there, isn't there?
Ooh. Yeah, it's just difficult because I, I just, I don't think it could be replicated. I think just if you haven't seen the film, watch it,
Yeah.
and you'll know how great it is. Were
Yeah.
there any big standouts to you?
I quite liked in sort of like the news montage of Connor for real, like uh and his genitals. There's a news line that goes like, "President calls Connor for real a dumb fuck." I love that, and then I think there's a line from I hope no future employers are going to hear this, but anyway, there's a line like is it Hunter the Hungry? Yeah.
Yeah, Hunter the
Yeah, like
Hungry.
I think Owen gets like a new helmet, and then he's like, "Yo, helmet's dope. It looks like the tip of Optimus Prime's dick." I was like, "That is just brilliant." Like it's so well written, isn't it? It's just marvelous.
Yeah, as a big Transformers fan, was that a
It
highlight?
was I like because John Thorpe, as you mentioned, like it's deep in my nostalgia, so it was a nice little. Like, yeah, I can imagine that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, and I'm just so happy that Connor made the right choice in deciding to perform with his friends rather than self promote.
Me too, me too, and like it just was a really nice moment, I think, in the film, and like to see them reunite. And to be fair, like I had a point about that. Like, oh yes, I actually like. What is who is your favorite member of the Style Boys? Because obviously, like Connor for real gets the most screen time because he like pursues a solo career. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I would say that probably Owen is my favorite
Yeah, me
because
too.
he seems to be the most talented and gets the least credit. Like, Connor for real is, let's call them by their kid names. Kid Connor is regarded as, the best performer, the biggest personality, then Kid Brain is regarded as, you know, the musical writing talent, and then Owen is kind of not really given any credit, but he seems to be the most talented. You know, like his beats seem to
Oh yeah.
be the best part of it, because obviously for us, because we're in on the joke of the film, we know that the lyrics are intentionally bad, they're intentionally funny. But in this world where he's actually considered a good musician, you know, people actually think this is good music.
Yeah.
Say like that catchphrase for that the catchphrase verse for you know, Emma Stone's song, like that's not actually well written, but
Yeah.
you know, they
I know what
actually
you mean.
fight throughout the film for credit of that garbage. So like clearly I think that Kid Contact gets the least credit. How do you feel?
I'm exactly the same, mate, to be honest. Like I really like Owen as well. And Owen's verses in all the Only Island songs are usually my favorite. Like his verse in Jizz
Yeah.
in My Pants is marvelous. I think it improves upon Andy Samberg's. And
Yeah.
oh man, like one thing I forgot
Just
to
did a grip
mention.
and I jizzed in my pants.
Yeah. Need a few things from the grocery. Do anyway. I'll
Absolute
link it in the
banger.
description. It is a banger, man.
Yeah.
One of the most underrated moments of the film was like when I think it's Hunter is like sort of reins in on the parade of the Style Boys reuniting in the documentary, and he's like talking to the Style Boys camera rather than his own, and then he turns around and like Snoop Dogg is just like, surprise motherfucker. I was just like, brilliant.
Yeah, like it manages to balance all of these celebrities' actual public personas
Yeah.
with also like undercutting humor by them being able to make fun of themselves. I didn't actually write down the example, but like ASAP Rocky's in the film, and I don't remember what it was, but I think the most self-deprecating moment of the film came from him.
Yeah, yeah. And like I think you put it perfectly there, mate, because you can sort of imagine these celebrities saying these things about real artists. Like Simon Cowell in this film speaks like Simon Cowell would, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that they don't actually think like an you know, EDM helmet is a good idea,
Yeah.
but I suppose, you know, he put together One Direction when they were obviously talented apart, so I think he does look for gimmicks.
Yeah, completely, man. And there's there's a quite a famous actor who like decks Connor for real. And is it the guy who plays Uncle Ben in Amazing Spider-Man?
Oh no, yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah, Michael Sheen. Sorry, Martin Sheen.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I thought his face looked familiar, so I just want to make sure if that was him.
Yeah, I forgot for a moment just because like his interpretation is so different from Cliff
Oh, it
Robertson.
is,
So
yeah.
like I was like Cliff Robertson's the only Uncle Ben.
He
Like
is. He
I
really
was about to
is.
say who I was like I'm pretty sure Cliff Robertson was dead then, Matthew, but then yeah it is Martin Sheen.
Oh, love Cliff Robertson, man. So good.
Yeah,
Do you have any final
I
points?
have to say, yeah, just regarding the final performance,
Go for
as
it,
you
dude.
said, Michael Bolton, incredible performer, incredible
Absolutely.
singer. You know, the entirety of the Lonely Island, incredible musicians, incredible comedians. The only thing that let it down, I thought, was lyrically, but that's intentional. You know, this is meant to be their comeback, and it's still shit. But you know, I would have I would have liked, you know, a really like breakout iconic song. I mean, I suppose this was meant to be them coming together with all their incredible thoughts. But I don't know. I would have liked something
Yeah, I
that
see what you
stuck
did
in my
there.
mind as much as Finest Girl.
Yeah, no, I completely agree and resonate with you, bro, because I think a song akin to like a Jizz in My Pants for Finest Girl, like I know it's
Yeah,
ridiculous saying that, like it's a ridiculous sentence for me to say, but like I think it would have been better for them for that to be like the final song, because not that Incredible Thoughts was a letdown, because Michael Bolton nails the vocals and stuff, and it's a hilarious song, but yeah, I do agree. And maybe it's slightly missed the mark for me a little bit.
yeah. So do you want to tell us your rating?
So hearing your thoughts, man, I might have to. I was originally gonna give it a 9. I'm gonna push it up to a 10 because your insightful points actually, I can resonate with them, and I actually think 10 out of 10. Loved it.
Well, thank you, sir. I do think this is maybe what like one of the most fun I've had with a film, because comedies often don't resonate with me as well as they do other people. You know, you hear people sort of cackling out loud, and that's just
Yeah.
not me. You know, I love sort of deadpan, sarcastic, self-deprecating humor, and that's all that this movie is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with a healthy mix of visual humor, which I'm not usually a fan of, but it certainly works in mockumentaries in this context. And I just love this film on every single level. The acting is incredible.
Yeah.
The music is incredible. You know, even when they're trying to make terrible music, they somehow succeed in thoroughly entertaining me. So I have to agree with you and give it a 10 out of 10.
Bro. Like, thanks so much for recommending this, because I'm so glad I ticked this off my list, because I actually never heard of it before, and I think it's one of those films where, like, I can imagine watching it with you and like laughing at it. It's sort of a similar way to like Spider-Man 3. I can imagine us watching that and laughing at it. So, but in this sense, we're laughing with it, sort of, because it is so self-aware. But it's just a remarkable film. Like, do you think there's room for a sequel? Would you like to see that?
I think that they wrapped up all that they needed to. You know, I really respected how well developed all the characters were in all three of these films, with some of the shortest run times I've ever seen. You know, you don't really see a film under 90 minutes that isn't like an animated kids film.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly they, you know, didn't want to overreach. They didn't want to, you know, stretch the storyline out unnecessarily. So I think if you can only really recognize that you have enough plot for 82 minutes, I don't think that there is room for a sequel, personally.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
No, I'm the same, mate, because I think there's maybe a room for a sequel for Spinal Tap, like we sort of mentioned, or something. But I don't know. Yeah, for this film, I think it nailed it. And it is so refreshing to see like a shortened runtime. Like, I think the longest film we watched today was maybe like 87 minutes, and that's including credits, bro. So like, it is good. And I had an absolute blast with mockumentaries. I think there's definitely room for a part 2 later down the line for us.
100%, especially because, you know, pretty much half of, like, say, Sacha Baron Cohen's filmography is just him taking the piss out of the public. You know, there's Borat and Bruno, and you know, other ones that I've mentioned. You know, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. So yeah, I think there's certainly room to talk about another batch of these kind of films.
Definitely, mate. So, did you want to wrap up, and then I suppose now, if you wanted to chat about our next episode of the podcast, Pixar Part 3, and I suppose what films we're going to be talking about there for anyone who hasn't seen Pixar Part 2, just to let them know.
Yeah, so if you haven't been keeping up with the series, we've been talking about every Pixar film released aside from the Toy Story franchise, because we've covered it in previous videos. So we've been doing it in batches of 3 to amount to a 6-part series. The next episode we'll be talking about WALL-E, Up, and Cars 2, 3 films that I'm not looking forward to watching. They are not film. Well, I've seen 2 out of 3, and I do not enjoy either of them. And Matthew has given me very low expectations for Cars 2, and
oh, man,
the depiction of Mater in Cars 1 has given me low expectations for Cars 2. So I'm kind of terrified.
It's so different from Cars 2, even in the genre. It's a totally different film, like, to what Cars.
It goes from a sports film to a spy film.
Yeah, so it might be one of those films where you think you'll dislike it, but you might like it more. It's a really hard one to call. Like, you could either hate this or actually generally think it's decent. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts for that one. So it probably should be out this weekend, I'd imagine, if we can get it recorded.
Yeah, totally. We'll hopefully be recording that on what day is today? Thursday. So hopefully recording that on Saturday.
Yeah.
And out for you out to the public very soon. I'm really looking forward to recording that, not necessarily preparing for it. I do think I would enjoy Cars 2 if it was a spy film centered around Lightning McQueen. The concern for me is that Mater is the main character. That's what terrifies me.
I know, but listen, mate, been great recording with you as always, dude, and thanks for recommending these films, because I had a blast with all 3 of them, mate.
It was great chatting about them with you.
Awesome, mate. Well, thanks to everyone who's listened to this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you're all safe and well. Hope your families are all safe and well. And we'll speak soon, guys, with Pixar Part 3. So take care, guys. Thank you, Callum, and enjoy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.